Gentlemen, am I often forgotten, but certainly not by me, Inquisitor Staffs. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to another video. This video is going to be an update for my Magic DPS guide, and this is going to be kind of the continuous theme that I have for videos going forward as far as updating guides is concerned. Rather than remaking the entire guide and making the video once again and repeating a lot of the same information, I'll make reference to points in those videos for things that have stayed the same, but when new power creep comes out into the game, I'll most likely just cover it in a update format and explain what the new stuff is, my thoughts on it, and how I've incorporated it into how I will approach doing damage with the related combat style or with a certain boss, etc, etc. So on July 4th, a new boss came into game. Zamorak himself is now in the game, and with that boss update, there was a lot of updates for a lot of different items. Not only were there boss drops that, comprised of the whole collection log of the boss, being the new vestments, armor, the T95 bow that came into game, and a couple ability codexes. There were also some enchantments, and there's quite a few of them, and it's targeting mainly the 3 rings that are combat style specific from the Rex Matriarchs, the tier 90 gloves once you have the enhanced upgrade on them, and as well as the hex style weapons being the Inquisitor Staff, Hex Hunter Bow, and Pterosaur Maw. All of these have enchantments to give additional effects, and I'm going to be going over the magic specific ones here. First on the list is the Enhanced Carapac wristwraps. They got an update to where if you use the Enchantment of Flames, all enchantments are bound to the player. They are not bound specifically to the item, so once you unlock them, it's just like unlocking a greater ability. They are permanently bound to your account. And all this does is effectively increase the damage from 25 to 40% when using Combust, and it keeps the same properties of having all of those hits go out at one time rather than damage over time. These gloves also stack with the lunging and rack and ruin effects, being that lunging will increase the damage of Combust, and Rack and Ruin will also give you an additional 2 hits, so it is quite a good damage increase, and I would recommend using these with any static target. Now, the enchantment effect, you have to be wearing the gloves for 9 seconds before you get the additional 15%, so this is kind of a forced hand scenario where they're trying to make it not a one-click swap for your Combust, being that it is pretty powerful. An additional 40% damage on an ability like this, especially when you start combining it with Rack and Ruin and lunging, makes Combust a very powerful ability, so I can understand the thought process in trying to make this not just a one-click swap or your Dragon Breath and then go right back to Cinderbanes or something. So again, I would say anywhere where you're not really taking any advantages from weapon poison and you're dealing with static targets, I would go ahead and use the wrist wraps anyway, because static targets, you're not able to move them and get the 2x multiplier. So from the lunging perk, you get the 1.5 multiplier, which is nice. It does help and makes Combust not that bad of an ability to use. And with the wrist wraps, it further increases the damage, and it gives it all instantly, so it's technically a DPS increase, but your DPM stays the same, so it's a burst damage increase in theory. So again, places where weapon poison doesn't work and you're equipping this all the time, go ahead and use it there, and then if you're using it as a swap, I would just use it as a swap on a static target. The Channeler's Ring got an enchantment as well, the Enchantment of Metaphysics, and basically all this does is it uses the same kind of forced hand scenario where you have to equip it for 9 seconds before you get the additional perks of the enchantment, and this further increases the damage from 4% to 6.5%, and it adds on top of each other for channeled abilities only. So while you're wearing this ring, the only abilities this really affects is Asphyxiate, Tendrils, the Armadil Battle Staff, special attack inside of like an EOF, and that's about it. And Greater Conch. How can I forget Greater Conch? Those 4 abilities are mainly what's getting affected, so I could see this being used as a preemptive swap. However, 9 seconds is quite a long time, and I don't see this being a effective replacement of Reaver's Ring in terms of overall crit chance during a sun or outside of a sunshine. I know for a while when the rings first came out, people were using channelers to swap for ABS to kind of average out the crit chance to make rotations more consistent, and Reaver's Ring was viewed as more of a RNG, kind of a top end, where if you look at a bell curve, for instance, Channeler's Ring would be more in the center of the bell curve, where Reaver's Ring can be on the extremes more per se. But when people wanted to focus on that top end performance specifically and really just kind of roll the dice, they would just end up using Reaver's Ring. And Reaver's pretty much, as far as I know, became common practice, assuming you did not need any type of accuracy at the boss you were doing. Channelers is still going to hold effect at places like Telos, where you need that accuracy, or Virago. So it's nice to see an upgrade for the ring, being you're going to use the ring at these places regardless, because Reavers is not really an option. But for any other boss in game, honestly, I don't see this ring getting a whole lot of use, especially being locked behind the charging effect, requiring 9 seconds of time for the ring to be equipped before you get the additional 2.5% chance. However, yes, this ring is technically better for those specific abilities, which are kind of your big damaging ones, although on Tendrils, it's kind of a lost cause because Smoke Tendrils, you're already getting crits. I'm not sure if this crit chance also gets applied to the auto attacks during a channel that are coming out. That is not something I've really been able to test or know too much about. That's kind of some really in-depth detail I'm not fully sure on. So if you know anything about that, leave it in a comment below. It'd be greatly appreciated. However, let's go ahead and move on to the last item. So the last item to get an update is the Inquisitor Staff, or all Hex weapons, but in Magic's case, it is the Inquisitor Staff, being that the damage portion of Inquisitor has been increased by a further 5% when you're using the staff. So Inquisitor Staff has a set number of bosses that it works on. If you check on the wiki, I can leave a link in the description below. The list of bosses and other mobs that are affected by Inquisitor, thus turning Inquisitor on its own without the enchantment into, I believe it's a tier 96.5 or tier 96.8 technically speaking, but it is a tier 80 weapon that gets a 12.5% damage increase as well as a 10% damage or accuracy increase when using it. So on its own, Inquisitor is already stronger than Fractured Staff of Armadyl. However, the big caveat with the Hex Hunter weapons is other types of damage, such as weapon poison, are only affected on the, or only calculated by the current tier of the item, which is a tier 80 item. The damage is not increased thusly with the damage increases. And so tier 80 weapon poison, now that we have things such as weapon poison triple plus, we have blood reavers in game that can really spawn out some stuff, we have cinderbange, which are pretty powerful, and weapon poison, where it works, is a very important type of damage to use, and you want that to be on its top end. That is why people before were not taking the extra tier and a half worth of raw damage, because you would actually end up losing out on targets. Specifically with Solak is the main concern, because it is a longer boss fight and it's not really worth swapping, because weapon poison is going to make this a lower damage overall. However, with the enchantment, it is now going from 12.5% to 17.5%, which I believe turns this into a tier 104, tier 105. The number I've seen tossed around so far is tier 104.8 on a technical scale, so just think of this as roughly a tier 105 or a level 105 weapon with the effect working. I cannot stress that enough. That is only with the effect working. So the damage is quite strong now, and I believe from some preliminary testing that a couple of my friends have done, they have said that Inquisitor is very strong, and it is really helpful for getting out quite a bit of damage under FSOA spec. So that is typically where I would see this getting used. Is you start a Sunshine, you get your FSOA spec going, you have your Tsunami up, and then you go ahead and swap to Inquisitor and let all of the auto attacks and ability damage get tier 105 damage and just really melt any sort of target. So the one ability, as far as magic is concerned, that got an update, actually, funny enough, is Sunshine. However, it is kind of not so much an upgrade in terms of damage. It technically is, but it's more so just a quality of life update. Greater Sunshine basically just takes a planted feet Sunshine and makes it to where you don't need a planted feet swap anymore. It'll make it a 37-second sun, and it gives you the little bleed hits that happen if a target happens to be standing inside of a sun. So it is technically a damage increase, and you don't need to use planted feet anymore. However, it is basically just a quality of life update. However, it is kind of nice because now you can just bring a T90 shield and you don't really have to use any sort of offhand to, like, an offhand defender to have your planted feet on. So you can just bring a shield, have full defensive effects, and not really worry about sacrificing inventory space. The main thing I wanted to update in this guide, other than showing the items that have power creep that have come into, or the added power creep that's come into the game, and, you know, new things that have come out that are kind of fun, I've actually made quite a few changes to kind of the order of how I do my Sunshine compared to the last video I made. The last video I made, or the Magic DPS guide, you're all very familiar with. That one showed a huge emphasis on getting out tendrils and kind of a early Omni power and not really using wild magic and asphyxiate to their full potential. So the new order of operations I kind of do with Sunshine is I use Greater Conch a lot more. I can since you're only getting one Omni power per sun, I put it more towards the later half of the rotation, and I focus on getting out 2 wild magics and 2 asphyxiates during my Sunshine. Now, to make up for the kind of time restraints you have with Sunshine, I only do a 2-hit asphyx or a 3-tick asphyx before I go into something else. And I try not to spam ABS too much anymore. I'll try and get another ability in, such as Rack and Ruin if it's built up, or anything else of the sort. So I'll go ahead and do a quick example of a kind of a newer Sunshine and just talk through as I'm going through it. So we'll go ahead and get the target. And I'll go ahead and start Sunshine, A-Pot. Usually hit Dragon Breath or G-Conch first. But I still do 3 basics, and I'll go into an Auto Tsunami, into a Staff Spec. Then I'll go ahead and go into a G-Conch, hope for some crits, and do a Wild Magic. If I don't get the crits, then I can do a basic into an Asphyx. And after this, I hit 10 Ds, kind of prematurely, but I'll go ahead and Omni, and into an ABS spec. Do a basic, another ABS spec, into a G-Conch, and I'll keep the dual wield on during the first bit of that Wild Magic, and then hit Asphyx. So that wasn't exactly the greatest example of a Sunshine, but that is in rough sense kind of what I do. What I try to do more often when I'm a bit more into it in the middle of a boss hour and really focusing, what I'll try and do is G-Conch before my Omni, and and G-Conch before my Wild Magic. Now, the thing to keep in mind is if you do a Greater Concentrated Blast and swap to your staff before you do the ability, it will not count. The G-Conch buff will not be applied to the ability that you have, that you do next. However, if you go ahead and do G-Conch and then hit the ability and then swap to your staff mid-ability, that will give you the additional crit chance on the ability you cast, plus equipping that staff will still give the staff autos that you desire. Because if you don't do it, then you'll just get no crit buff, but still get the auto. So it's, if you want to take advantage of the G-Conch effect on your threshold, just go ahead and hit G-Conch and then hit the ability with your dual wield still equipped, and then just swap to your staff right after that. Anyways, I hope this updated sun rotation helps you out in your boss endeavors, and the information on the new items coming into game can help you understand kind of what they are and whatnot. Anyways, let's go ahead and roll that outro. Ladies, gentlemen, and I did not forget about you Inquisitor Staffs, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your viewership as always. If you are not subscribed to the channel, we are very close to 500, and hopefully we pass that after this video goes live. But we are on the path towards 1,000 subscribers. I hope we can get there somewhat soon. But more importantly, I hope that these guides are helpful to you and you find the information in them useful. Anyways, I'm Car Guy. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, night time, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next video. Peace.